had a former student pose the question, should I stretch myself to buy something that is renovated or something that is cheaper and do the reno myself?
Welcome to Your First Home Buyer Guide, the podcast for first home buyers who want to get it right.
I'm Megan and that was Veronica. We're both buyer's agents and probably old enough to be your mums. But that's a good thing because between us we've got over 40 years experience and we are going to share with you bucket loads of stories about avoidable mistakes. Together, we're going to make sure that you get unbiased and real information that you can rely on so you can get where you want to be without missing a step.
Now, we've got loads of great tips for you in this episode, and if you'd like more useful tools, head over to the website homebuyeracademy.com.au. There you'll find free checklists that you can download, a free mini course on how to price a property, and our Where to Buy workshop for only $39. Priceless stuff, really.
Bargain. But before we get into the interesting stuff in this week's episode, here's the boring bit, the disclaimer. You, of course, know that nothing in this podcast is to be taken as personal advice. We always recommend getting the advice of an expert in their field of expertise. Now, we've done our very best to ensure that the content is correct at the time of recording, but things change. So check with the relevant government authority or your advisors to get the most up-to-date information.
Today we are talking about that common question, should I renovate or not? As always, there is no single right or wrong answer. It all depends on you and actually the property that we're talking about as well. Yes. But believe me, not everybody should take on a renovation. And as with every week, Megan is sitting in front of some amazing building, often a home, not always, and this one does not look like a single house. What is that in the video behind you? Looks like a chrysanthemum with lots of pools.
Yes. So it's just beautiful. It is the Lotus Temple in New Delhi, and just another reason to thank good architects for their creativity. I mean, look at that.
It is amazing.
Just stuff. Don't you just want to go and sit and look at it?
So are they pools around the edge of it, do you know?
Yeah, so it's almost like a moat kind of around it, and then they've got the bridges that go across into the main building.
I want to be in the pool, though. I get the feeling.
Stunning.
I got the feeling they're not really pools for humans, though. Does look very nice. All right, here we go. So, renovating is something that it comes onto the radar quite a lot in a rising property market, where people go, "Well, the only way I'm going to get into the market is if I buy some heap of crap and renovate it,"
or the old, "I'm going to buy the worst house in the best street." Yeah.
Or I've been watching The Block, and anyone can do this.
Yes, and I can do it in 6 weeks with $100,000. And no, you can't. Yeah. Look, a big question that you have to ask yourself is, can you see the vision, or do you have to see the end product? Now, we work with buyers all the time, and I know that I can have a couple who he or she can see what something can be. I can walk into a place and I can say, look, if you did this, move that, change that wall, extend it out here, did this, this is what you'd end up with. And one of them will go, oh, it's perfect. And the other one will go, I just don't see it. And it's always couples. There's always opposites in couples. If you got singles looking, they're either one extreme or the other. Like, there's no two ways about it.
Sometimes, though, and maybe even more annoying, is the person that sees potential in everything, and not every property should be renovated. We can do this, we do that.
We call them sow's ears, don't they? You can't turn a sow's ear into a silk purse. Yeah,
that's it. You can't polish a turd into a strawberry. It's like, I've had people walk through like skinny little houses, because of course in the area in which I operate, there's lots of skinny little houses, little terraces and semi-detached houses. And And it might be on a really tiny block of land and people walking, oh, do you reckon you could go up? And I said, yeah, but the problem is with going up here is that you would lose your second bedroom to a staircase. And then when you go up, you get to put one bedroom in. So you end up with a 2-story, 2-bedroom home. You might have an extra bathroom, but you have just spent a lot of money to get a bathroom. Just leave it as it is.
My architect often talks about, I've done a number of renovations over the years, and my architect often talks about the key to starting is situating the stairs. And a lot of people start without the stairs and they want to plonk them in afterwards. But it's such a fundamental part of architectural design is getting those internal stairs right, because nothing, you just can't, where they enter in and out of rooms and directions and all those sorts of things has such a big impact. So going, oh yeah, we could do 2 bedrooms and a bathroom up there and we could turn that and that and that. Okay, so where is your staircase?
Oh, just put a lift in. Takes up less space. This is the thing with the staircase. And look, we are digressing a little bit. We're focusing on one thing, but the reality is
it's an important question.
It's a really
walk in and, it's a big part of it.
And this
is
the
just
thing.
Whether you can afford it.
A good renovation has an end result that doesn't have you thinking, oh, I wish you'd done this or this or this or this. And I tell you what, stairs are one big issue. And I often think, oh, I wish I'd done this or this, right? So they have to be, in a Victorian terrace, for instance, they're really steep. I've seen them at like 45-degree angle. They're like climbing a ladder, right? Gosh. Now, you can't build a house with that, or you can't add an extension on and have a staircase that steep because it's no longer to code. It's dangerous. But if it's existing, and that's what was in the house when it was originally built, you can leave them there. But I have seen some attic conversions. So a lot of terrace houses have got quite a high pitch in the roof and an opportunity to potentially go up and put another room up there. And I have seen them ranging from fantastic conversions where you got a nice easy staircase up there. It enters the room at the right spot. So you've got a full floor, full plate. You don't have this raised section because quite often you have to have a raised section because it cuts into the roof of the ceiling of the room down underneath. Like, it's very complicated getting these right.
Yes.
The amount of times I've walked up staircases to go into an attic and I've got my sunnies on my head and I've whacked it and my sunnies have hit my head and I'm not even that tall, right? So anyone taller than me has to duck, right? So that's very common. Yeah. Also, what happens is quite often I've seen them, I don't know how they got them approved because they're really steep. It's like climbing a ladder. Or other times the way that they've had to return because they haven't had the roof height and the length to actually have the one flight of stairs into the attic. They usually have a turn somewhere. And so they enter the middle of the room, which means that basically you've got this nice big room, but then you've got a staircase in the middle of it, which means you can't put a bed anywhere. Like literally you've got this small room outside it. And then the other thing I often see is that you enter into a space where, so you might want to have a study up there, for instance, but it's got dormer window. You've got this sort of fairly high-pitched ceiling. And if you put a desk against the wall, you can't actually put a computer on it because the roof runs down to the back of the desk, So they've spent all this money creating a room that actually isn't usable.
Oh, gosh. And that's just one small thing. So you're right. Those people that walk in and say, I can see the vision, but they've forgotten the key element, which is how you get from one level to another one.
Yeah.
It's all well and good to think that, but we often talk about clunky layouts, and if you can't fix a layout, then it's not a property that should be renovated. You should never put money into a property that doesn't have that functional flow and that ability to work as a fully functioning property for the demographic and number of people that it's actually designed for. So, if it's a 2-person house or a 3-person house or a 6-person house, you have to have that right balance of bedrooms, bathrooms, living spaces, outdoor spaces, connections, and how things flow or can be shut off. And there is a bit of a movement at the moment. I don't know if you've noticed it, but in Queensland, we were very, very focused on open plan areas, lounge, dining, kitchen, all in together. There's a little bit of a movement at the moment towards having some separation in the living spaces, which is, very much that colder climate, smaller spaces, able to be shut off for noise and warmth. sort of going back to those, not so much formal areas, but just an area where you can break away from all of the noise of the common space.
And that's exactly it. I mean, certainly when I renovated my house, I've got a big sort of 1.2 meter wide sliding door that when that's open, the living area and the kitchen and dining area, they morph into each other. But when it's closed, you can actually have those as separate spaces. So if my daughter's deciding she wants to, not that kids watch television anymore, they do everything on their computers, but if she happened to be in the lounge room, I could be in the kitchen, the dining area, and you can have our own separate sort of privacy and not inflict each other's entertainment choices on each other. But so the house or the property that you're looking at renovating, it's to sum this rambling part of the episode up, it has to deserve being renovated, and it's called adding value. And if you're not actually adding value, and it's not just monetary value, it's adding utility and adding usability to that house. So like I said before, if you're going to lose a room to put a staircase in, you need to get a lot more on the upper level to compensate for that. And if you're not, then you have to think, well, is it worth it? So
are you actually detracting from the value rather than adding to the value? And it's a really good point that you make, because in assessing whether a property deserves to be renovated or not, you actually have to do a bit of a feasibility study to say, okay, well, I can see the vision for this property. I can work out where to put the stairs. I know the balance of bedrooms, bathrooms, living spaces. I know I can get that roughly right in my head. But what is it going to cost to get from A to B, C, D, or E? And is it something that you can sort of stage and do bits of along the way, or is it something that literally you have to go from A to Z and there's no stopping in between? So
what's it worth now?
What's it worth
now? What
will
it be worth, if in today's market, if you did that work
at the end, and how much is it going to cost to get there? Because what we've seen, particularly since, say, COVID through to where we are heading towards the end of 2022, is quite a dramatic increase in the price of the cost of renovations. And access to tradies is actually becoming a little more difficult because they're very busy with an awful lot of different kinds of work, whether it be building, the building incentives that are out there, the first home buyer grants that encourage new builds. A lot of tradies are really busy on those sorts of projects. So their prices have actually been increasing, as well as the price of actual cost, cost of goods. So copper, metal, steel, all of those sorts of transport to get things from one place to another. All of these costs have gone up. So what might have been an estimate for a renovation of, let's call it, $1 million 2 years ago, could actually be about $1.3 million now. So there's been quite when you're doing that estimate of what's it going to cost to buy, what would it be worth in the end, and how much is it going to cost to get me there, a lot of people are actually finding at the moment that maybe that's not a viable project to do because the end cost will be so much more than what the property is worth.
Yeah. Now, obviously in that too, you're trying to, it's tempting to try to say, but prices will be higher then. And, they might be.
They might be.
But you do sort of do your calculation in today's dollars just to give it some relativity and context. I know I've renovated a number of properties. I know you have too, Megan. So therefore, we're fully aware of how costs can blow out. One of the ways that costs blow out is because people change their mind all the time. And so I know that certainly with my most recent renovation, I made an absolute commitment to myself that I would make all my decisions ahead of time, and I would not change my mind. Now, that's not to say that throughout the build, my builder sometimes suggested a couple of things and we tweaked things and we could see opportunities, to do things slightly differently as the build progressed. But I didn't go in there going, I'm not really sure about those kitchen cupboards now. I'm not really sure about that wall or that door or whatever. I made an absolute commitment once things had started. That was it. Wasn't changing a thing because I was Madam Tight Ass in terms of my budget. It was like, no,
that's managing a project, isn't it?
Yes,
that's making sure that your project management, your costings are right, but also that from a mindset point of view, you're not just a bit fluffy about tiles. We've got a PC amount of $80 a square meter, but gee, I like those $300 tiles.
And they are much nicer $300 tiles than $80 a square meter tile.
But getting that PC amount right at the start means that you haven't got the cost blowout at the end. So doing a little bit of shopping around and understanding what your cost might be for those sorts of items, pretty important to do. But managing a project, and this is what you're doing. You're managing a project. Some people have project managers that they put in place. Some people have architects. These people still need your guidance, and you still need to be on top of them. So whether you as an individual have got the time, so we're talking about whether you should stretch yourself to buy a renovated place, or maybe buy an unrenovated place and do the renovation yourself using trades. But have you got the time to actually be on top of the project, the time frame, the milestones, the costs, the tradies that are coming and going, the material movements? Now that's a big part of the builder's job, but you as the owner, ultimately you need to be across those sorts of things, and variations, which is what we talked about, where you change your mind that's outside the scope of the original scope of works or the contract that you've signed. Those variations you need to keep a pretty tight hold of, because they can really add up, and that's a legitimate cost. That if you say, oh, instead of that I want this and it costs more, then that's a variation of the contract and you pay more for that. So in a fixed price contract, those variations can really start to add up if you're not in control of them.
Yeah, and they'd also have additional labor costs as well. It's the whole project managing thing is interesting, because if you don't project manage, or you don't have a project manager, or your architect's not project managing, and often with first home buyers, they don't have the luxury of having an architect and all those additional people. The builder is left to make decisions on site as they go. And I guess the first renovation I did, I was really quite shocked at that. I just thought, well, an architect designs it and surely the builder just builds to the plans. And then the builder started showing me, well, I've got this odd sort of roof alignment or roof line in the front of this particular house. And he was very proud of himself. I may have told this story before on the podcast. He was very proud of himself of how he'd finished off all the plastering on the inside. And I was like, oh, great. Yeah. Like, don't you have plans to build to? I don't understand why you're so proud of yourself. I learned not long after that, I actually learned, so he gets two-dimensional drawings aren't necessarily specifying all of those details, right? And if you do have two-dimensional drawings that specify all of those details, you've just paid your architect a lot more money than I paid my architect.
Yes.
So I was fortunate. I had a builder who had good ability to actually, he was technically good, right?
And a good problem solver.
I've seen some pretty horrible examples of builders who weren't technically good, who have made their decisions on site as to how they should finish something off. And then you go, oh my God.
Yes, and they're not easy to undo. You think about Queenslanders, they have vertical joint boards. So the vertical joints run up and down. There's two ways of finishing those. There's a square edge, and you've got to work out how to finish it. And some really poor quality builders will put some sort of
like a strip.
Yeah, strip on the outside of it. Really good quality builders will actually do the mitre, the 45 degree, and they come in beautifully, and the painters just sort of finish them off. That's a big difference to, someone like me walks into a house and goes, oh, cheap, versus, oh, nice.
I do that with bathroom tiles. It's exactly the same thing. A good tiler, you won't see the join, but a crap tiler, they've got those metal strips on the edge, on the corners of the bathroom. It's exactly the same principle. And so you don't know this stuff, right? And so I guess the thing is, should I renovate or not, is go and educate yourself a bit about these sorts of things. Get an understanding of the shortcuts that a builder will take if they don't care, if they don't, they don't know any better. You know,
particularly if you choose a builder because they're the cheapest. I mean, really, a bit like buying a C grade or a D grade property. Really, don't do it.
Here's another one. Here's one I hate. It's like you go into houses that have been renovated and you're walking through the floors, and they might have timber floors, right? And you get to a bathroom and there's a ledge, like a lip about 20 centimeters or 20 millimeters, 30 millimeter lip, right? Because the tiles, they haven't accounted for the difference in levels of having to waterproof and put tiles down in bathrooms. Now, a really well thought out renovation is seamless. There is no lip in your bathroom. You don't kick your toe. You don't stub your toe on when you get to the bathroom floor, because it's been thought through by all the trades. They know how to build quality, and so they're not going to slapdash and, forgot about that. That's extra depth. Little things like that, they make a big difference.
They do, they do. Although I have to admit that that can be the case if you want frameless showers and things like that. You actually do have to get the direction of the water going the right way, and you might end up with the lip when you have an existing joist or floor or concrete slab that you can't do anything with. So I guess there are exceptions to that as well.
Well, having a builder that discusses those things with you and
Being
the trade-offs rather
it.
than just builds it and goes, oh, but I thought you wanted it that way. Anyway,
that really well.
So being involved, not just leaving it to the builders to do it. Like you got to go there. I think.
Do you have the time? Do you have the interest? Do you have the skills to do that? You know, there are so many people that are very good in their area of expertise, in their jobs and their careers, but this is just going to be way outside your ability to manage minute details that you're not even aware that you need to be managing. So, you know, the most intelligent people that I know aren't going to be very good managers of renovations. But that doesn't mean they're not intelligent. It just means that that's a gap they don't have time to fill with knowledge.
Well, that's the same goes for very intelligent clients that I have, and they're hopeless at buying property by themselves,
yes.
You know.
But they're self-aware enough to say, I don't know what I'm doing.
But they got an expert. That's okay.
Then a lot of legalities around renovations as well, Veronica. You know, there's a lot that you need to know. And it's not really always the builder's job to inform you about those sorts of things, whether it be building insurance or levies or superannuation that you have to pay on the builder's behalf. Like there's a lot of things that sit around that. And it's actually up to you to inform yourselves about those things and know where to go to find that information out.
Yes, well, there's a lot of levies and fees and things as well. Like, so there's all these sort of unknowns. And even though I've done it, 3 times, I still get caught out, So 3 times is not enough to be completely familiar with all those things.
And building codes are different according to different city plans and different zones and different overlays. So what you might be able to do on one block of land in one area is quite different to what you might have to do with a certain age property in a completely different area. I looked at a place, was potentially thinking about buying a renovator, and it's got a chimney that goes all the way to ground, and it's an 1888 property. Now, the restrictions around that property are so much greater than anything built after 1911 in character areas. So unless you know those sorts of things, like that property probably can't be raised or moved, and it's well forward on the block. You could not renovate it and get a garage in as it is. But if you bought that thinking, oh, yeah, I'll just knock the bottom of the chimney out and I'll move it backwards. No, you can't.
Yeah. It's a really good point. It's something that comes up a lot in my area of inner Sydney as well, is that a lot of properties are in conservation area. So my house is in a conservation area. Now, when I've got a double fronted freestanding house, and and it was in really crappy condition when I bought it. And I looked at it and I thought, well, it'll be great if I could go up at the front. That'd be fabulous if I could go up at the front, or even set back, behind the first sort of hip, I think it's called, in the roof. And I discovered it's a conservation area, and also I'm on a side lane, and the property on the other side of that lane is heritage listed. So there's no way in a million years I was going to be putting anything up anywhere near the front of my house. So that's a restriction that if I didn't find that out before I bought, I would have been sorely disappointed. I wouldn't been able to get what I wanted. So I went to my architect and said, can I get a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 1-car parking house on this site in this block? And so I went to an architect that knows that local council, and I got that advice. And you can often find architects that will pay you can pay a few $100 to get that advice. And it's so worthwhile doing, because, and the other thing, that people find, or like building materials, or like, they think they're going to be able to put a window on the side of the house, but because it's on the boundary, they can't. Or, there's all of this, there's, like you said, building codes that are in place to protect us in many cases. But then there's this, if there's a lack of understanding of what the codes might be and what you want to do versus what you think you should be able to do versus what can be done, then those things can be checked out before you buy the property. And sometimes they're massive deal breakers. Like I've said to clients, I remember the one particular property, all the houses in the street had parking at the front, right? And there was this absolute no-brainer spot where you think, great, you should be able to put parking in there. So, and I said, look, we talk about precedent. Oh, look, you look for precedent. So all the neighbours have done it. So, you'd hope that it's a good chance. Let's investigate that, right? Other people, and I know I've heard sales agents say this, look, the neighbours have all done it. I'm sure you'll be fine. So I'm not a sales agent. So we go and investigate that. And the architect said, no way in hell. That council has the attitude that if you put a car space in at the front of the property, you're taking away public parking. So that's it. No, cannot get it done. Doesn't matter that everybody else has got it done.
Isn't that a great lesson in not assuming just because the neighbours have done it? Don't assume that you can, because the house might be a different age. It might have a different overlay. Rules change. The block size, the frontage, all of these things can affect what you can and can't do. And just because that one looks really similar and they did it, might not be the precedent that you actually need. So good point. Actually, it's not just an architect that I think is important to talk to. It's also a town planner.
Absolutely.
So having, as part of your toolkit of your support crew, having a town planner, you might pay them a few $100s for an opinion on something, but gee whiz, it might save you a absolute bucket load of money in buying something and then not being able to do what you want to be able to do.
I bought my house, so the one I'm living in now. I bought it from a couple of young gung-ho fellows, and they'd only owned it for less than a year because they bought it from a Greek yaya who'd been here for 50 years, right? And they were all excited because they could see how run down it was, and they thought they were going to knock it down and build 2 townhouses here. Now, they didn't, honestly, it was so easy to find out you couldn't do that, but they didn't bother. They just thought you could do it. So they spent all this money getting plans drawn up, lodging a DA, and basically failing, and then put it back on the market because they couldn't do what they wanted. Now, they were lucky enough to make a bit of money. I would have preferred to have bought it the year earlier and just, be done with it, but I wasn't in the market a year earlier. So they did they made a bit of money because the market was rising, not because they were clever. But, they failed in their most basic due diligence. So they had all this plan to do something that was never going to be approved.
Yeah. And I guess that's the thing about, when you're tossing up between stretching to buy something that's done versus buying something that needs some work, is you need to do due diligence on properties that have been renovated. You need to make sure that they were done in compliance with and certified with all of the relevant authorities. So there is still due diligence. You can't assume that what someone has done is actually to code,
been approved.
So that you still have to do that due diligence. But you need to do a similar type thing leading up to potentially renovating. Just don't assume that you can knock it down or you can put in that car park or you can go up that level. These are all great stories that people can use to say, oh, hang on, red flag, I can't just assume that because the neighbours have done it that I will be able to do as well. There's all that underground sort of thing that can affect you as well, where there's a sewer run, where's the stormwater, are there any easements over the property that might prevent me actually building out towards the back? So lots of due diligence to do, but also to do it on properties that have been renovated. So neither one, one thing or another might not be a showstopper, but a collection of things might be.
100%. In fact, a couple of months back, we bought a property for a client that had been fully renovated, and they didn't have, and look, of course, in New South Wales, we have prescribed documents in our contracts, so therefore a sewer diagram, and all they had in there was a letter from Sydney Water saying, well, that they didn't have any records of a sewer diagram. Now, I know because this is a prescribed document, it needs to be part of the contract. It's not good enough to go, oh, there isn't one. Well, it's like, well, you need to go and bloody get one. And the thing is that they're the ones that did the renovating. And what happens when you finish your renovation? Your plumber needs to actually draw up a plan and send that off to, I think it goes via the Office of Fair Trading in New South Wales to the Sydney Water, right? And so this should have been done when they renovated. The very fact that they're saying, oh, they don't have one, it's not good enough. And then we started digging and going, oh, and looks like actually it was built over the sewer line. So then you go, well, there's a whole nother load of things that we need to look through to say, well, has that been approved? Has it been encased? What happens if something goes wrong? Blah, blah, blah. Now, it's one of the benefits of doing our course. We do take you through all these questions you need to ask, but I'll tell you what, most buyers wouldn't know that they need to do this. And in a hot market, they won't ask the questions because they're just so desperate to buy. But in a quiet market, the lawyers might start raising these questions and all of a sudden it becomes an issue and trying to sell it. So we refuse to buy the property without them doing this stuff, right? So then it took a while and then they finally got all these things, documentation or whatever, and then we were satisfied and bought the property. But, there's just no way I would buy a property, particularly if it's built over the sewer line. But when you don't even have a sewer diagram, how do you even know? And so in Queensland, that's something you've got to request.
Yes, you actually have to order it and pay for it yourself. But I think further to that, Veronica, had they not been able to produce that documentation and those buyers had not had you representing them and they'd bought that property, if the council becomes aware of illegal buildings or illegal renovations or extensions, they can issue a show cause notice, and you have to either get that approved to current code or demolish it.
Yeah. Now, that's pretty extreme.
That's extreme.
But it does happen.
Yes.
And this is the thing. If you're going to renovate, make sure you do it properly. And if you're going to buy a property, make sure that you actually check that they did it properly. And because if you do buy a renovated home, let's face it, would have been a hell of a lot easier for me to buy this done. I would have moved in a lot quicker. I wouldn't have had because there's uncertainty around bill costs and there's always contingencies. And so even though
you've got to rent and it's inconvenient and there's a lot to think about. We haven't even touched on that in this episode.
No. But yeah, renting while you're renovating. I mean, some properties you can renovate while you're living in it. Others you have to move out. Like, so there's all these different considerations. And these things have to be added into your costing.
I'm about to do it myself. I'm about to embark on a major renovation of my house. Raise, build under. It's I think it's about the fifth one I've done, but I lived through the first two. Not this time. I'm out of here. So part of my actual feasibility and the financial costing actually involves, well, how much rent am I going to be paying during that time? And it's an important thing to factor in to your equation, because you can't just go, hang on, I've got an extra X $100 a week that I need to pay in rent. Where's that going to come from? Are you going to do more work, earn more commission, get a second job? Like it has to actually be paid for on a week-to-week basis.
And you've got to insure the property while you're renovating it, because you want to insure for the work that's been done, the bit of the structure that's not going to be demolished. So,
and some insurance companies won't insure it if you're out of it for more than 60 days.
So it can get very complicated. It's certainly worthwhile. I mean, I certainly enjoy living in a product that I was very involved in designing, and even though I'm not the architect, but certainly it's to my taste, you know what I mean? It's my home and it's got my touch everywhere. And that's great because, there's very few I see that I would be happy to live in without feeling annoyed. Yeah. So that's why I decided to do it again.
Yeah.
But I'm a bit fussy. So, most people aren't as fussy as me, but maybe not you.
Look, I've got to say, I think people are. It's just how much they're prepared to compromise on.
Yeah, and a hell of a lot easier if you just buy the renovated product. But also you don't have those uncertainties in terms of cost as well. You know what you're getting. And
speaking of costs, if you do buy a renovator, you've got to have a really good think about, can I live in this and I'm going to stage the renovation? Like, is it just going to be bits at a time? If you're doing a bathroom and it's only a one bathroom property, where are you going to shower and toilet while that bathroom's being done? Are you going to have to, get into an Airbnb or a friend's place for a period of time? Do you have the money to do the renovation? Because if you've saved everything and that goes into your deposit and your purchasing costs, how are you going to fund the renovation? Where's that money going to come from? Are you going to eat into your contingency and potentially put yourself at a little bit of risk if some maintenance comes up unexpectedly? And how are you going to then continue to rebuild your buffer and your savings along the way?
Lots to consider. So we're not necessarily pro or anti. It's very much case by case. And so it's case by case in terms of your individual requirements and aptitude and appetite. And also the property itself. Does it deserve to be renovated? A lot of first home buyers in particular will look at something entry level and think they'll have to renovate it. But even then, you've got to be very careful. You're buying something with the right bones, so it's worthwhile renovating.
Absolutely. And once you get that renovation bug, I'll tell you what, it's very hard to very hard to shake it.
Well, you're a good case in point on that, because you are about to embark on renovating at a time when trades are at all-time low, availability of trades at all-time low, the costs of supplies at an all-time high, and rents are rising and you've got vacancy rates that are really low. So congratulations, Megan. You know, we talk about trying to time
eyes wide open,
time the property market. You picked the quadruple whammy there. I look forward to seeing the end product.
Contacts. I'll give you updates as we go along.
Yeah, do.
In this episode, we've covered a very small part of our 10-step online course for first-time buyers. If you would like to learn more about the process and how to buy without making a mistake, then head over to our website, www.homebuyeracademy.com.au. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you won't miss an episode. And if you like what you've heard today, please give us an iTunes review. 5 stars would be wonderful. It will help others find us as well.
Thank you for joining us. We hope you found this really useful. And if you have, please share the love with others who you know are in the same boat. We'll be back next week with some more priceless stuff.